us have a look at what we looked at last week once again. So this is a really good moment for you to go and use that screenshot that I was talking about, because we're going to have a look at this table again, guys. This is really important, this section. All right, a reminder, okay, when we have a question and in that question, there is a plus sign and a minus sign next to each other. So if we have a question, and we'll look at an example now, but there's a positive and a negative sign next to each other, we must always remember what sign is more powerful in that example. It's a negative. So for example, if we had to have 4 plus, and in a bracket, negative 2 equals, okay, when we're solving that sum, what would you go and do? We'd go and we would draw a circle around the signs that are next to each other. We'd say to ourselves, we've got a positive sign and a negative sign next to each other. Because those positives and those negative signs are right next to each other, we're going to cross those out and it's going to become a negative. So 4 minus 2 is going to give us 2. Next example, if I have a negative and a positive sign next to each other, so if it looks something like this, again, I've got a negative and a positive sign next to each other. Which one's the more powerful sign? The more powerful sign is a negative. Good. I'm liking that we're writing things in the chat. Well done. That are maths related. Well done. So for example, if I had 2 now, minus positive 4 equals, what would I go and do? I would go and I would draw a circle around my signs. I've got a negative and a positive sign right next to each other. When I have a negative and a positive sign right next to each other, good, it becomes a negative. So 2 minus 4, you remember that last week we practiced that on a number line. 2 minus 4 becomes negative 2. What happens if we have a positive and a positive sign right next to each other? Okay, so if we have 2 signs and they're the same and they're right next to each other, then 2 signs that are the same right next to each other are going to remain positive. So for example, if we have 6 plus positive 6, what does that equal? Well, a positive sign right next to a positive sign, we can still go and draw a little circle. But when 2 signs are exactly the same and they're sitting right next to each other, we can cross those out. And we know that that is going to stay as a positive. So 6 plus 6 is going to give us 12. And finally, our last ones to see right next to each other are a negative sign and a negative sign. The signs are exactly the same. When we have 2 signs that are exactly the same and they're right next to each other, good, I'm seeing some good answers there. We're going to be left with a positive. So for example, if I've got negative 4 minus, in my bracket, negative 4 equals, I go and I draw my circle. I've got a negative and a negative. When the signs are the same, what happens? I cross that out, and a negative is going to become a positive. So negative 4 plus 4, what will that give me? That will give me 0. Right, now is the time for you to take a screenshot of all of that. Okay, so I would suggest taking a screenshot so that you've got it recorded, so you've got it on your phone. It's a really important point that we're looking at there. Okay, make sure that you've got that recorded. Take a screenshot of it. Make sure you've rewritten it. Make sure that you've got it. All right. Okay, so that is what we looked at last week, and we practiced that a whole lot. So we're just going to do a little bit of revision on practicing that very quickly, and then we're going to move on to our real life problems. And when we say real life problems, often what we mean with real life problems is we're looking at word problems some of the time. All right, so hopefully you have copied that all down. Okay, we are going to look at moving down on our screen. Unfortunately, our screen is busy glitching at the moment. So we're just going to have a look at erasing it very quickly. Apologies, everybody. See if we can get rid of this for you quickly. Okay. All right, so okay. Unfortunately, it is busy glitching, so I'm just going to unshare my screen with you very quickly, and then I will reshare it with you now. So what we're going to do next is we are going to have a look at what is the next part now that we're going to look at. A few weeks ago, we looked at the less than, greater than, and equal to sign. I hope that you remember that when we were looking at less than, greater than, and equal to signs from a few weeks ago. Okay, and you guys did really well at that. And we had some questions of that in our quiz. We looked at that in the quiz, and you guys did really, really well when we practiced that in our quiz. So I hope that you remember the little tricks and cheats that I taught you when we were going through that. I hope you remember that when I taught it to you before, I taught you the dot system from before. So that's what we're going to practice today. So we're going to practice on looking at greater than, equal to, and less than, okay? And when we're looking at that, we're actually going to also look at using the dot system that we used before. All right, so let's have a look at sharing my screen with you again, because it is now letting us do that. So apologies, everybody. Let's share the screen with you again so that we can see what we are doing. And let's see how it's going. So I know that it might seem intimidating sometimes when the sum looks slightly longer than what we've done in the past, but there's no need to worry, okay? We're going to do this in steps. All right. So to do it in steps, okay, I'm going to start by working underneath my sum. So I'm going to start by looking at the left-hand side of my sum, and then I'm going to look at the right-hand side of my sum. Remember, BODMAS always applies in this case, okay? But because in these sums we're dealing with pluses and minuses, BODMAS not really going to have a major effect on us. So looking at the left-hand side of my sums first. On the left-hand side, I have 5 plus, and then I see I have a bracket, and it says -4, close the bracket, minus, open the brackets, -2, close the brackets, -2. So remember that sometimes, especially when you're in a test or exam, okay, things can seem a little bit overwhelming. I get that. I know that happens in a test or exam. But what you need to remember to do is take things in steps, everybody. So the first step I'm going to go and do is I'm going to go and circle all of the signs that are sitting next to each other. So I've got a plus and a minus sitting next to each other. Okay, I know when I have a plus and a minus sitting next to each other, what's going to happen? Those signs are going to cross out, and it's going to become a negative sign. I see for the next one, I have a negative and a negative sitting next to each other. What happens when the signs are the same? Okay, a negative and a negative sign sitting next to each other. I'm going to cross those out, and it's going to become a positive sign. So that's step 1 for me. Step 1, circle all the signs that are sitting next to each other and work out what the new signs are going to become. All right, step 1 done, ticked off. Okay, now that I've got that right, okay, remember that I can always use a number line. There is nothing wrong with using a number line. All right, so I'm going to go draw myself a number line on the top here, just to help myself out with each time I do a question. I'm going to have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, -1, -2, -3, -4, -5. So step 2, I'm going to go and I'm going to draw my number line. So step 1, I did all my circles. Step 2, I've drawn my number line. Okay, so for my first sum, I'm starting at 5. So here I am, I'm starting at the number 5. Okay, and I say 5 minus 4. Well, 5 minus 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to end up at 1. All right, and then I'm going to say 1 plus 2. Well, 1 plus 2, I'm at 1 plus 2 is going to take me back to 1, 2. My final answer on this side is going to be 3. So we've gone and we've taken this really long, complicated sum and we've made it really nice and easy. Do you have to use a number line? No, you don't have to use a number line, okay? Is it useful to use a number line? Yes. All right, on the other side, I'm going to do the same steps. I'm going to go, I'm going to circle my signs that are next to each other. I'm going to go say to myself, I've got a positive and a negative sign, so I'm going to cross those out. It's going to give me a negative. I've got a negative and a negative next to each other. I'm going to cross those out. It's going to become a positive. All right, so you can go and you can use your number line. That is perfect. Nothing wrong with that. Or you can say 5 minus 2 gives me 3, and 3 plus 4 is going to give me 7. All right, so the final part of my sum now, or the final part of doing this, all right, the sum asked me which side of the equation is greater. Show this by using a greater than, less than, or equal to sign. So when we did this the last time in our lesson, I said to you guys, okay, whichever sign is greater, we draw 2 dots. Whichever sign is less, we draw 1 dot, and then we join them up. Another way to do it is some of you use the crocodile mouth. So the crocodile is always hungry. He goes to the side that's more. That's perfectly fine as well. But we can see that 7 is going to be greater than 3. Okay, so if you get a sum that says that, it says to you, calculate which side is greater. You're going to follow the steps. And Hugo has very kindly written them out for you in words there. And you can even go and screenshot what Hugo has written there in the chat. I would suggest doing that. It's very, very useful to have the steps written out for you. Right, I'm going to do one more with you, and then I'm going to let you do some by yourself while I answer some questions. So let's have a look at B together. So for B, step 1, I'm going to go and circle. And I'm going to go and circle. I've got a positive and a negative, so I cross those out. It gives me a negative. I've got a positive and a positive. Cross them out. It gives me a positive. -1 minus 1 gives me -2. And -2 plus 7 is going to give me 5. How did I calculate that? You can use your number line. Okay, remember to use the steps. Use your number line to help you. There's nothing wrong with using your number line. On the other side, I'm going to go do the same thing. I've got a positive and a negative, so I'm going to draw a circle. I've got a positive and a positive next to each other. I'm going to draw a circle, and a positive and a negative next to each other. I'm going to go draw a circle. When I see a positive and a negative, I cross them out and I put a negative. When I see 2 positives, cross them out and put a positive. And when I see a positive and a negative, cross them out and put a negative. So -1 plus 7 will give me 6, and 6 minus 1 gives me 5. So now I see that both sides of the sum are both equal to 5. And what do we know? Is 5 equal to 5? Yes, it is. So my sign I'm going to say is equal to. Okay. I'm going to let you go ahead. I do not want you to put the answers in the chat. I don't want you to put the answers in the chat. I want you to go ahead and work out the next 3 for me while I answer some questions. So I'm going to answer 3 questions. If I don't get to your questions, what I ask you is if you can please either ask Hugo in the chat, okay, so you can send him a direct message if I don't get to your question. The other option is that you can also write your question in the chat, and if we don't get to your question, what I will be doing is answering all your questions at the beginning of the next lesson. So here we go. Evan, you can unmute yourself, and what is your question, Evan?
Ma'am, I just want to know, ma'am, if we get a sum like 5 plus -5 plus 0, will we say 5 or would we say -0 or would we say undefined?
Okay, so Evan, you tell me. So what's 5 plus 0, Evan?
5.
5, good. Okay, and 100 plus 0?
100.
100, good. So you know, okay, that adding 0 to something doesn't change the value of it. Do you agree?
Yes, ma'am.
So when you add 0 to something, Evan, it's a really good question. When you add 0 to something, it never changes the value of that number. So in other words, this value of -5, okay, Evan, this value of -5 is technically, he's sitting over here at -5. Do you agree that that is his value? His value is -5. So if I say to you, add 0 to -5, are you going to move anywhere on that number line?
No, ma'am.
No, you're not going to move anywhere on that number line. So actually, what's your answer going to be, Evan? Your answer will be -5.
5.
Because if you think about it, when you're saying, what's 1 plus 0? It's like saying to yourself, go to the number line, go to the number 1. Right, now add 0 to the number 1. Well, you can't add 0 because 0 doesn't have a value. So it's the same thing as saying -5 plus 0. Okay, go to -5. All right, now add 0. Can you add 0 to anything? No. So what will the value be? It'll be -5.
Thank
Does
you,
it make
ma'am.
sense, Evan? You're welcome. No problem. Good, very, very good question. Thank you for that question. All right. Unati, how can I help?
Ma'am, can you please go through one more time with question B? It was
Okay.
confusing.
Okay, so Unati, I promise I'm going to go through C, D, and E. And then can we go through those ones when I've given everybody a chance? And then we're going to go through C, D, and E, and then you'll see if you can get it. And if you still can't get it, then I'll go back afterwards and do B with you. Okay, promise.
Okay, ma'am.
All right, go try C, D, and E for me, though. Go slowly through it and go through the steps, okay?
Sorry, ma'am.
Yeah.
About the boom camp also, is it for only maths?
It's only maths, yes. Unfortunately, Watobe only does maths.
Okay.
Okay,
Thank
but
you.
if you are looking for other subjects, you could send Watobe an email and see if they can help you as well.
Okay.
Okay, thanks, Unati.
Thank you.
All right. I am going to go to my next person who has their hand up here. I've got my last question for now is Ulangako. For me. Okay, I think he's unmuted himself. I have got, I think, Evan, I already answered your question, but I'm going to unmute you again because I see your hand is still up.
Oh, man, I forgot my hands up, ma'am. I'll put it down quickly.
Okay, thank you, Evan. All right. Kolefelo, I'm going to move to you. Kolefelo, what's your question?
Ma'am, I wanted to ask if are you revising last week's work or is this the new work?
So, Kolefelo, this is just revising what we did last week, just finishing it off very quickly, and then we're going to do this week's work afterwards.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, no problem. All right. So, let us continue on with what we're doing. I will answer your questions a little bit later on. I'll ask for some more questions. Again, you can ask Hugo in the chat. Please make sure you write your questions there so that we can get to them. So, let's have a look. I'm hoping that you managed to get to see. What I'd like to do is have somebody help me with C. So I'm so sorry, our screen disconnected again. So let's connect our screen once again. What I would like to do is get somebody to help us with C. So if you are willing to help us with C, and if you haven't done yet, that's fine, don't stress. You will get a chance to do some more by yourself a little bit later on. Let's share our screen with you. So we're going to bring that up, share our screen. Okay, let's have a look. Who wants to help me? So I have, who was the first person here? I've got Unati. Unati, you're going to help me do C. Right, Unati, let's have a look. Unati, what's my first step in C? What am I going to do first?
I'm gonna look for the minus, circle the minus and the positive, ma'am.
Fantastic, Unati. So Unati, stay with me. Don't go, hey? So we're going to
Okay.
circle. So let's go. I'm circling that one.
It's gonna
Circling
be
that one and that one. All right, Unati, tell me. Positive and a negative next to each other. What's it going to be?
they're gonna be both negative, ma'am.
Good. So that one's going to be negative. That one's going to be negative. And this last one is also going to be?
Negative, ma'am.
Good. Well done. Okay, so I've got 5 minus 1, which is 9. 9 minus 2, which is 7. And 7 minus 5, what did you get, Janati?
7 minus 5, it's 2.
Good. So I got 2 that side as well. Well done. Nice. Okay, Unati, let's move to this side. All right. Go through the steps with me again, Unati. What's the first thing I do?
Where are we now, ma'am?
We're on the other side of the sum.
Okay.
On the other side.
Circle the 2 negatives.
Good.
It's gonna give us positive.
Nice. So that gives me a positive. Circle my 2
And-
positives.
It's gonna give us still the same, ma'am. Still the same.
Good. Nice. And my last one, a negative and a positive. What does that give me?
A negative.
Very good. Well done. So I've got 10 plus 2 is 12, and 12 plus 5 is 17, and 17 minus 1, do you agree with me that we get 16?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, Unati, you tell me, which one's bigger, 16 or 2?
16 or 2. 16, ma'am. 16.
Fantastic, 16 is bigger. So I do my 2 dots on that side, because that's bigger. I do my 1 dot on that side, and then I join them up. Nice, well done, Unati. You told me you didn't understand, and look, you got that one. Well done. Nice, well done, Unati. Thank you so much. Okay, so I am going to do the next one by myself quickly for you, so it goes very quickly. So I'm going to circle my 2 negatives, and that's going to give me a positive on this side. I'm going to circle those 2 signs. It's going to give me a negative, and then I'm going to go calculate. 5 plus 6 is 11. 11 plus 2 gives me 13. On this side, 6 minus 2 is 4, and 4 minus 5 is negative 1. So I know that 13 is definitely bigger than negative 1. And finally, my last one there before we carry on with today's work. So I've got a negative and a positive next to each other. I cross them out, I get a negative. I have a negative and a negative next to each other. I cross them out, I get a positive. 15 minus 19 gives me negative 4. And negative 4 plus 1 is going to give me negative 3. On the other side, I go and I do the same thing. I've got 2 negatives next to each other. 2 negatives next to each other gives me a positive. I've got a negative and a positive next to each other. I cross them out, it gives me a negative. So 15 plus 1 gives me 16, and 16 minus 19 will give me -3. And because I have -3 on both sides, I know that those are going to be equal. Okay, so my suggestion, all right, is to take a photo or a screenshot of the answers. So I'm going to give you just 1 minute to take a screenshot of those answers very quickly. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to erase all the answers off for you, and you can take a screenshot without the answers so that you can go back and you can practice this question, because wasn't this a really good question to practice all of the sums that we just did? Okay, it's a really good way to practice your integers or calculations. All right, so I'm giving you 10 more seconds to just take a screenshot. All right, I'm going to erase all the answers off for you now so that you can go and take a screenshot without anything on it. All right, so go take a screenshot of the question with nothing on it, because the best way for you to learn maths is for you to practice, do lots and lots and lots of practice. So take a screenshot with nothing on it and go back and practice this question. Okay, hopefully you have that screenshot locked in. All right. Okay. Let's bring that back for a little bit later on when somebody does have a question. Okay, so now we are going to move on, and we're going to move on to today's work. So integers is very, very important, everybody, when we're dealing with temperature. So we're going to look at temperature first. We know that temperatures, especially if you live in places that get really, really cold, right? So we're heading into winter now, and you know if you live in places that can get really, really cold, is that temperatures can often drop below 0 degrees. All right, and often when temperatures drop below 0 degrees, what happens? We often get snow, hey? Okay, so we get snow, it gets really cold, all right, and temperatures can get very, very cold. When they drop below 0 degrees, what happens? We get negative temperatures. So to do temperatures, all right, normally we look at temperatures on what we call a thermometer. So if we're looking at the thermometers that I have here on the screen for you, okay, in grade 7, we are expected to be able to read temperatures off of a thermometer. So we're expected to be able to record temperatures on a thermometer, and we're expected to record, to read temperatures off of a thermometer. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to number these very quickly. So this is number 1, number 2, number 3, and number 4. Now, these are very different thermometers than from what you guys are used to, okay? You guys are used to the electronic thermometers, all right? You had those loads and loads when we had COVID at school, and you guys went back and they scanned your heads and then the temperature just came up, all right? But if you work in a place like a hospital, or if you work in sciences, then you need to know how to read a thermometer properly. So if we're looking at the first thermometer here, and we're trying to read the temperature off of this thermometer, firstly, we can see that this thermometer is reading in 20 degrees. So it's going up in 20s. And if I'm looking where this thermometer is stopping, this thermometer is stopping here on this line at 80. So if I want to say what this temperature is, I'm going to say that it's 80. And if I'm reading temperatures in South Africa, we say 80 degrees Celsius. So that's how we would write a temperature. All right. Let's have a look at number 2. So for number 2, we're seeing now that this temperature is below 0. So it's to the left of the 0. Here it is sitting on this line over here. So it's not sitting exactly on this 20, which is what the temperature was reading on. It's sitting between the 0 and the 20, the negative 20. So if it's sitting between the 0 and the negative 20, then it would be fair to say that the temperature is going to be negative, because it's below the zero, to the left of the zero, negative 10 degrees Celsius. All right, I want you to have a look at the next two for me. Okay, I don't want you to write them in the chat. All right, so have a look at the next two for me very quickly. I see that I've got two hands raised. I'm going to answer those two questions. While you're answering those, do not write the answers in the chat. Kumo, how can I help you?
Hello, ma'am.
Hello, what's up?
Ma'am, on number two, ma'am, the question says, ma'am, 80 degrees, ma'am, and ma'am, the 20 is between 20 and 0, ma'am. So, ma'am, how did you get the 10, ma'am?
I'm so sorry, Kumo, you're cutting out a little bit. Do you want to try say it again for me?
Ma'am,
Yeah.
I'm trying to say, ma'am, on number 2, ma'am.
Yeah.
Ma'am, on the 80 degrees, ma'am, and 60, 40, 20, ma'am, right, the 20 is between the, how did you get negative 10 degrees Celsius, ma'am?
Okay, so if we had to write these in here, Kumo, the ones that are missing, this is 10, this is 0, this one here would be 10, hey? Then it's 20, this would be 30. Then it's 40, this one would be 50. So
Yes,
if we're
ma'am.
going the other way, this one is going to be 0, this one is going to be negative 10. This one is negative 20, this one is going to be negative 30. Can you see them?
Oh,
Okay, does it make sense?
30. Yes, ma'am.
Awesome. Thank you, Kumo. All
ma'am.
right. Okay, I'm going to answer one more question. Dimple?
Ma'am,
Hi.
Ma'am, I don't understand. Like, how did you get negative 10?
Okay, Dimple, did you hear what I was saying when I was speaking to Kumo now?
No, ma'am.
Okay, so let's have a look quickly. All right. So can we see, Dimple, that the line is lying on this line here? So if we
Yes,
had to
ma'am.
go on these little lines, so I've got 0, and then this would be 10, and then I've got 20, this would be 30, and then I've got 40, and this would be 50,
50.
hey? So if I
Yes,
was
ma'am.
going the other way, Dimple, what would I have? I would have 0, and then I would have
Negative 10.
negative 10. Good. And then I've got negative 20, and then I would have negative
30.
30, hey? So what is this lying on? It's lying on
Negative 10.
negative 10. Does it make sense?
Yes, sir.
Good girl. Okay. All right. I am going to move on, and we will answer some more questions a little bit later on. So my next one that I'm reading here, I can see that this line is lying just between 140 and 150. So I'm going to say it's about 145 degrees Celsius. If you got 144 or 146, I'd be happy with that as well. All right, and my last one that I've got there, I'm going to say that that last one is 190 degrees Celsius. Okay. All right. So I am going to have a look at the next part of the question. I do see you've got some hands raised. I will answer some more questions a little bit later on, I promise. The next part of the question asks me, correctly represent each temperature on the thermometer. So this is a little bit harder for you guys to do because I can't share this question with you. I've got it on my screen, but we're going to try as best as possible. So it says to me, correctly represent 100 degrees Celsius. I know that 100 degrees Celsius is sitting over here. So if I'm going to represent that with a straight line, unfortunately, I can't draw a straight line, but you guys can at home probably. Oh, wait, I do have a straight line. Okay, I'm going to go with a straight line And let's see, hopefully it lets me do a straight line, maybe not. Okay, and I'm going to use my ruler and fill into 100 degrees Celsius. All right, the next one it wants me to do is negative 15 degrees Celsius. Negative 15 degrees Celsius. So, unfortunately, our tablet is having a bit of a meltdown again. So we're just going to try as best as possible to get them to work nicely. There we go. Okay, so our next one asks us to do negative 15 degrees Celsius. So we're going to go and we're going to say to ourselves, okay, well, this here is going to be negative 20. We saw earlier that this here was negative 10. So I would say that negative 15 is somewhere in between those 2 points. So with a ruler, I would very neatly draw my line so that it goes up to negative 10. Okay, make sure that you have drawn a screenshot of these two questions. Okay, I'm going to fill this one in for you again. Make sure you have a screenshot of those two questions, all right, so that you've got them, so that you've got it recorded, so you can go back and you can have a look at this question again. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to move down to the word problem. I see that I've got some questions on the screen, so I'm going to answer those questions. And in the meantime, I'm going to ask you to solve that word problem for me. I don't want you to answer the question in the chat. I just want you to have a look at it. I will go through it for you once I'm finished answering the questions. So the question says, question 1, the average temperature in the day in summer is 25 degrees Celsius. In winter, the average temperature is 14 degrees Celsius. How much does the average temperature drop by as winter begins? On one summer's day, the temperature is 32 degrees Celsius. How much warmer is it than the average? On another summer's day, the temperature is 19 degrees. How much cooler is it than the average? And the previous year, the average temperature in winter was 3 degrees cooler. What was the average temperature in winter the previous year? So have a look at those word problems for me. I'm going to answer 3 questions in the meantime, and then I'm going to come back. Please don't put the answers in the chat. All right, my first person I've got here on my chat is Tashia. How can I help? You are unmuted. Tashia Moma? Tashia Mo, you are unmuted.
Hello, ma'am.
Hello, how can I help?
Ma'am, I wanted to ask that how did you get to for question 2A? I didn't understand how you got to those.
No problem. Let's go back and have a look quickly. So hopefully everybody's taken a screenshot of this. I am going to come back, I promise. For question 2A, let's go have a look. It says correctly represents temperature 100 degrees. Well, I went to my thermometer. I went and had a look. So I'm just going to take this off quickly. I went to my thermometer. I went and had a look. Well, where 100 degrees Celsius is going to be positive, so it's going to be bigger than 0 degrees. I went and I found where 100 was, and I drew a line on him. Okay, and then what did I do? I drew a straight line that took me to 100.
Also, ma'am, what we had to do was we had to take the line from where it is until to the number that they said we have.
That's right.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome, no problem. Okay, I'm gonna answer Bradley. So Bradley, it should be asking you to unmute. How can I help, Bradley? All right, Bradley, it should be asking you to unmute on your screen. How can I help?
Ma'am, I
can understand. Ma'am, I can understand when it comes with the temperature uh, being minus zero, because you say it's negative, or we keep on saying it's negative, like the original integrate did. Like all the teachers for the rules for integrates to rely on those.
Okay, say it again for me, Bradley. Say it once more. You can't understand?
Ma'am, does the rules of the integrate still relies on what we're doing for the temperatures and all of those?
Okay, so I'm just going to put you on mute, Bradley, just because there's a bit of noise in the background, and then I'm going to try answer. Okay. So the rules for integers are exactly the same. If the number falls below 0, then it is negative. So we were looking for negative 15 in this last question here. So I went to 0 because I knew that negative 15 was below 0. I went and I found out where would negative 15 be. So I said to myself, negative 15 is going to be, okay, I knew that this was negative 10, this line over here. So I knew that negative 15 was going to be between negative 10 and negative 20. So in between those 2 points. And then what did I do? I just joined up this line to get me to negative 15. So that's how I read negative 15. I hope that that helps. All right. I am going to move to Tara Jane's question. Tara Jane, how can I help?
Hi, ma'am.
Hi.
Well, I think it was the third thermometer. I just wanted to ask, how can we be quite accurate as possible? Because when I saw it, it looked like 140 degrees. So how do you not know if it's like 143 degrees?
So for me, Tara Jane, when I looked at it, if I go really close, I'm going to make it really big on my screen for you, quick. Okay. So when I look at it, whoopsie daisy, not my screen, there we go. So it definitely looks like it's not falling. Can you see I'm making it really big? It's not falling on that 140 degrees line. Can you see it there?
Yeah.
It's off the 140 degrees. So what teachers say is that as long as you get somewhere between like 145, so you like normally go 2 degrees before and 2 degrees after, then we're okay. You don't have to be exact. It's a difficult one, that one.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome, no problem. All right, so we have this last question to answer. So what I'm going to ask is that anybody who still has a question, please make sure that you've written it in the chat so that we have a record of it. Please, please, please. If you still have a question and you've written in the chat, it means that at the beginning of the next lesson, I can come back and I can answer those questions in the very, very first few minutes of the lesson. What I'm going to do is I'm going to answer this question for you guys. Okay, Hugo's going to put up the poll after that, and then we are going to say good night. So please make sure that you are going to put your questions in the chat, everybody. Right, the average temperature in a day in summer is 25 degrees. In winter, the average temperature is 14 degrees. By how much does the average temperature drop by as winter begins? So if it's 25 degrees in summer and it's 14 degrees in winter, that means that it's dropping by 11 degrees Celsius. So we're looking at the difference between the two. B, on one summer's day, the temperature is 32 degrees. These people definitely live in Durban, hey? How much warmer is it than the average? So if the average is 25 degrees and it was 32 degrees, then the difference is 7 degrees Celsius. On another summer's day, the temperature is 19 degrees. How much cooler is it than the average? So how much cooler is it going to be than the average? So if the average is 25 and it was 19 degrees, that means it's going to be 6 degrees Celsius. And finally, the previous year, the average summer in winter was 3 degrees cooler. What was the average temperature in winter the previous year? So if this year it's 14 and last year it was 14 degrees, all right, and this year it's 3 degrees cooler, it will be 11 degrees Celsius. Okay,